Hi, this is Joe Welinske from the ConveyUX conference, talking with many of the presenters who will be at our event coming up in January in the Seattle area. So we hope you're able to join us for that. And right now I am meeting with Dan Klyn. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Where are you talking to us from today?
I'm in my living room in Hudsonville, Michigan, which is about 3 hours from Chicago, 3 hours from Detroit, two flights to anywhere.
Well, I'm assuming that you're there because you wanted to be there as opposed to exile of some type.
I do. I live next door to a house I played in when I was a little boy, and the people who live there are still my little friend's parents. So I definitely choose to live here, and it's pretty great. My company's headquarters is in Ann Arbor, which is on the other side of the state, but here in West we have lots of snow, and we're right near Lake Michigan. It's pretty good. Although I have to say, Seattle is one of my favorite places to visit, and I'm eager to go in January.
Well, it's a little chilly, but no snow here. But let's see, we're recording this on November 17th, so you have snow there already, right?
Oh yes, yes, lots of it.
Okay, lots of it.
That's my excuse for this beard. Keeps me warm.
Uh, I thought it was like no shave November or something like that too. Or
It's that every month of the winter
yeah,
here in
okay.
Michigan.
Well, all right. So the things I want to talk to you about, maybe start with just the nature of the work you're involved in, what kinds of your company and the types of projects that you do.
Sure. Uh, the company is called the Understanding Group, and we call ourselves TUG for short. And that was something of a you start to do all manner of things with tug once you have that, like tugboats and such. And the picture of a little tiny boat and those giant ships that they guide into just the right place, that's not a bad analogy for the kind of work that we do as information architects. There's a small number of us relative to the grand group of people involved in making the website, and we do. It may sound a little bit grandiose, but sort of the ability to steer a big, um, powerful, expensive project into just the right place. A lot of that has to do with meaning and structure and information, and that's where we like to work. And typically, our projects don't involve us making anything out of pixels or giving anybody any code. One of the fun things about the way that we work is that it could be done with a stick in the dirt. Most of the really breakthrough stuff that's going to help people align and understand and move forward is really simple. Getting there is hard, but there's this wonderful opportunity, we think, for people like us who are interested in information architecture to offer that as a service. For a time, it was rolled up under sort of an umbrella of UX, let's say. But we're finding that there are lots of companies who have plenty of really great UX design and development folk who don't think in terms of architecture, don't specialize in thinking and working in terms of architecture. And we're up to 13 or 14 of us now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
a
your analogy with the tugboat, being the little boat, yeah, those little known from around here in Seattle, those little boats have huge freaking engines inside those things. So along with your analogy, I guess you must have a big engine with that 13 or 14 people to
we do
move
something.
direction.
I'm not sure anybody else, and I'd love for this to be the case if it were true, but I don't think anybody else brings as many information architects to a problem the way that we are able to. Typically, if somebody loves this kind of work and specializes in it, they are the one on the team who does, and they've got a lot of other practitioners that they work with. And not that that one voice of IA speaking into a project isn't enough, that's great. Most projects don't even have that, right? But to bring, 3 or 4 people at all these different levels of expertise. So to have Andrew Hinton, who's been doing this for 20 years, working on a project with a new grad from the School of Information in Ann Arbor, where we vacuum up most of our people from, to have that contrast of tons of deep experience and then new ways of thinking and working, it's pretty awesome. And I love, one of the reasons I love Seattle is because you have all of those marvelous tugboats to watch.
So, so on the awesome side, what are the cool new things that you're thinking about, that you're excited about? Any hot new thoughts about where you want to go with your projects?
I think one of the more exciting developments is, um, and it's not new really, but now everybody has to do it, is the combination of accessibility with responsive. There, I didn't fully imagine 3 or 4 years ago, let's say, um, how this would all work out. But now, in order to design anything for a desktop without also working through the permutations, both from a little tiny, people are doing this. This is how most people will interact with it, is in their hand. So to not necessarily always mobile first, but mobile plus accessible, uh, that's just what you ought to do for people. To make things good for people, it needs to be accessible to the widest range that you can persuade your stakeholders to adopt. Those two things colliding with how great UI can be with all these drawers and slidey things. It's I have somebody that I get to work with on a project who is a graduate of architecture school. She has her master's degree in architecture, and I was asking her the other day about her colleagues, how they are working as architects in the built environment, because I have this naive fantasy about sort of like a Mr. Brady 70s architecture world. And the way that architects work today, and architecture students, a new student grad with a master's degree in architecture doesn't really get to work in terms of like making how the space is. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is that the stuff that we work on, these are places that are made out of information, and we get to do what only like really senior architecture professionals in the built environment get to do. Many of us still, there's so much work for us. There's so many of these places that we're making out of information that we're getting to work with questions of how humans and human dwelling and how people move around in a space. People who work in the built environment don't get to work on that very much anymore, and there seems to be an almost endless amount of need for us to be making places out of information for people and to make them be good places. And none of us know how to do that yet, really. So that's pretty exciting.
Well, just to talk about a couple of topics that you have that you're going to present the conference. One of those is strategy and structure, doing it right, and how you'd know. So
Yes.
it's a mouthful. What's that all about? What was the genesis of putting that together?
The genesis of it was initially a request by Jared Spool, who does a really cool local conference called UX Thursday, and he brings that to Detroit. This has been the second year now, and he asked me. He'd heard me talking about this thing in the built environment with architecture, the idea of ducts and decorated sheds as the way that you would talk about the range of structures in the built environment. So think of a duct-shaped building where it sells ducts. That is like the tightest possible wedding of strategy and structure. Our strategy is to sell duck eggs and chickens and fryers and all manner of things. So the building itself tells the world this is where you go for that. And then on the other side of that range is a decorated shed. It's just a box. It's just a building, and you put a sign on the front of it that says ducks today. Great. You could put another sign on it tomorrow that says frisbees. You could put another sign on it tomorrow that says church, and it wouldn't matter. What the building structure is isn't linked directly to what the strategy is, and that conversation, our nascent medium of the internet, is now mature enough where we can have a grown-up conversation with the deciders at, at big companies. Uh, we're going to make these things that you need made, but we can actually choose. There isn't a good, nobody could say that they know for sure what is the right way to do it. There's no right way, but there are good ways. And so to be able to talk before any code is written, before any engineering stuff is even being thought about, figuring out what we want to do, and then deciding how much what our strategy for the project is and for the experience or the service that we're building. How tightly do we want the way that we present that to be aligned with what we mean by giving that service? And I would say, for example, Square, if you've ever used Square as a retailer, or you go to a craft sale and you want to sell your tea cozies, and you have this little thing that sits on your phone and it allows you to do commerce. If you look at all of the ways that they present interfaces, you could tell it's Square. It has this signature, it uses the shape of the square as its name and as the interfaces. That's kind of like a duck in that analogy. On the other side of that, if you look at PayPal, PayPal's front page will look like Square sometimes. But then you get 2 clicks into it, and it's regular old PayPal. It's just like a decorated shed. And if they want to compete with Apple Pay, they'll make their front page look one way. If they want to compete with Square, they'll make it look another way. So strategy and structure, and Jared hearing me talking about, well, what the hell does that mean for what we do, was his question. And then so that was sort of the genesis of this, was having a 20-minute way to talk about that for Jared's audience in Detroit, which was great. And then talked about it in Boulder at a UX strategy conference.
All right. Well, yeah.
So
Look forward to seeing that, and the other topic that you have, because of McLuhan. I haven't cracked open Marshall McLuhan books since I was in college, but I'm intrigued. So maybe we can hold that off to.
What class did you have McLuhan taught in?
It was a communications related class, and I remember being really fascinated by it at the time, but
Well, much
I
like
don't think I've gone back to look for quite a while.
well, I think much like the things that I'm sort of retrieving from architecture in the built environment, the question has to be asked: what the hell does this have to do with what we do when we make apps and products and services? And there are some really interesting ways that it pertains, especially with things like Agile. If the medium is the message, and the medium that we get to work in is exclusively sticky notes and whiteboards, what we're able to do with that is affected in really powerful ways by the medium. Irrespective of anything that we're going to put on those sticky notes or on that whiteboard, these things have inherent properties that, as designers and developers, if we know about what the medium does, that'll help us differentiate that from what the content is.
I'm looking forward to hearing about that as well as the other topics. So we'll see you here in Seattle in a couple of months.
Fantastic.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dan.
I enjoyed talking with you, Joe. Thanks.
All right. Bye.